Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. I do have one quick favor before we get to the video that you came here for, and that is very simply this. You see that little red subscribe button below this video? Go ahead, smash that subscribe button. It really does help me. It really does help this channel grow and my audience grow. So go ahead and hit that red subscribe button. And now, here is the video that you came here for. All right, last little topic before we get out of here. How about those Bayou Bengals? And so I mentioned that it's kind of a quiet weekend in college football. I know I've said it a few times, but no A&M, no Ohio State. Clemson and Notre Dame are off prior to the ACC championship game next weekend. And what's kind of disappointing about that is that the games that are on the schedule just aren't all that exciting. And the one game that should carry some weight, LSU Florida, is just a total dud because LSU stinks. They're 3-5, and they're headed for the worst season basically in any of our lives for a defending national champion. They are 3-5. I'm going to assume they're losing to Florida this weekend because they're a 24-point underdog. But they're 3-5. They'll probably be 3-6. At best, finish 4-6. And this is this would be the worst finish for a reigning national champion since 1943. Ohio State in 1943 was the last national champion to finish the following season with a losing record. Don't know if you guys remember that. I'm not too keen on how those 43 Buckeyes were, but apparently they weren't very good. But I do think it brings up a broader question about something that I talked about on this show after LSU won the national championship last year. And that was, it was two contrasting things that I thought was interesting. We've been waiting for a decade for a second team in the SEC to emerge to challenge Alabama year in and year out. Could LSU be that team? But then the counter was it possible that LSU was a one-year wonder that was not going to last in the big picture? And I think it's been proven, beyond a reasonable doubt, LSU ain't built for the long haul. And as I said, they are coming off one of the worst, they are in the midst, I should say, of one of the worst seasons ever for a reigning national champion. And it continues to get worse, by the way. The reason I'm bringing up this topic is two things happened at LSU since I last spoke to you. Their best wide receiver, Eric Gilbert, who's one of the highest rated tight ends in the history of high school football, was a freshman at LSU. He quote-unquote opted out of the season as a freshman over the last couple days, but it sounds like he didn't really opt out. It sounds like he's about to transfer, so that's one. And then two, LSU also announced that they will self-impose a postseason bowl ban for this year. Now, many of you are probably asking, how do they even qualify for a bowl game at 3-5? Well, remember that bowl game, there will be no record attached to bowl games, so you could literally go 0-10, and if a bowl game wants you, you can play in a bowl game this year. But it kind of just proves the point that I was trying to make last January, when everybody was, Coach O this and Coach O that, and this is the greatest thing ever. And I said, I love this story. It's one of the greatest stories that I've ever seen in college football. The Coach O revival, the Joe Burrow revival, all of that good stuff. I'm just not sure it's built to last for the long haul, and I thought you could see the foundation cracking even as LSU had the confetti falling on them at the Superdome last year in New Orleans. And let's talk a little bit about it. First of all, like I should say, right, I always try to tell both sides of the story. Defended Coach K 2 minutes ago in some regards, but not in many others. But in defense of Coach O, like everyone with a functioning brain knew that LSU was in some way, shape, or form going to take a step back. There was no way that they were not going to take a step back. You have to remember everything that they lost last year. It wasn't just Joe Burrow, the Heisman Trophy winner. They also lost a total of 14 players who were drafted to the NFL draft. 5 of those were first-round picks. In addition, they lost their offensive coordinator, Joe Brady, who was like the most meteoric superstar I've ever seen in college football. He took the job as the Carolina Panthers offensive coordinator. And then defensive coordinator Dave Aranda took the head coaching job at Baylor. And so LSU essentially lost everybody from last year's national championship game. 14 players were drafted. The offensive coordinator, Joe Brady, takes the Carolina job. The defensive coordinator, Dave Aranda, takes the Baylor job. And then even when the season began, it was just like one thing after the other after the other. And again, a lot of this isn't Coach O's fault. They had 3 starters that did return opt out of the season. Jamar Chase, last year's Biletnikoff winner as the best wide receiver in college football, opts out of the season. 2 defensive starters opt out of the season. When the season started, Miles Brennan, their starting quarterback, got hurt. Has missed the last 6, 7, 8 games. Once things got bad, other players opted out. Terrace Marshall, their leading receiver, opted out. Their second leading receiver, Eric Gilbert, as I just said, opted out. But it brings us to where we are today, where LSU is 3-5 and in the midst of the worst season ever. And I do think some of this is on Coach O, right? This was a program that was built on culture and accountability, and it just feels like for whatever reason, I don't want to say accountability is lacking, but it just feels like there's something that isn't quite right. And some of it is on Coach O. You know, first of all, when Dave Aranda did leave, when Joe Brady did leave, basically on the offensive side of the ball, he essentially hired from within. Steve Ensminger was basically renamed the offensive coordinator. He had been in that position, but was going to take over play calling. And then defensively, talk about a disaster. Guy goes ahead and hires Bo Pelini, who has been a cluster you-know-what. And that does fall on the head coach. And I will say, like, even when he hired Bo Pelini, it kind of felt like, well, this would have been cool in like 2006, but in 2020? Like, this is what we're going to do? And that's essentially what's happened at LSU, is that it's been a complete disaster. Now, Bo Pelini doesn't have a completely stacked deck. They lost a lot. They had a few guys opt out. But LSU is still ranked 115th nationally in total defense and second to last in the SEC, only behind Ole Miss. And at least Ole Miss scores a bunch of points. That's why their defense is so bad, is because they're on the field so much because the offense can't stop scoring. But LSU's defense is just bad, so that's on Coach O. But I think the larger thing, it just feels like there's something that's not right in the facility, right? And I can't claim that I know what's going on. I can't claim I know what's happening, but something just doesn't feel right. And it's been going on really the last 4, 5, 6 months. I mean, if you remember in the preseason, Coach O did like a TV hit on Fox News, and it became a controversial thing, and his players didn't like it. And I'm not saying that Coach O shouldn't be allowed to do what he wants to do in his free time, but it clearly missed a chord with his players. It clearly upset the players, and there was clearly division in the locker room at that point. The on-the-field decisions haven't worked with Bo Pelini, with some of the decisions, personnel-wise. And more importantly, it just feels like the culture is gone, man. You know, Joe Burrow, you talk about a guy, never forget, it was literally a year ago this weekend that Joe Burrow was accepting the Heisman Trophy on that Heisman Trophy podium, basically saying, like, I owe my life to Coach O. That's like a father to me. He's bawling, he's crying, and I'm not criticizing him for crying. Sometimes a man's got to cry. I cry sometimes. There's no shame in that. But he's crying, talking about how important Coach O is to him. Those players, how much they love him. And for a year later to be one negative thing after the other players opting out, the best recruit leaving, it just feels weird. And so I don't know what the answer is. And I will say, like in Coach O's defense, I think he will figure it out. You lose that much front-end talent in your junior and senior classes, whether it's because of players graduating, first of all, then leaving for the NFL early, then a couple players opting out. It's going to have a trickle-down effect. He has recruited well. There is plenty of talent in the program, and I do believe that he will be able to figure it out. But what I would also say, the counter to that is that this notion that he was going to build LSU into a program that could annually compete with Alabama at the top of the SEC, which was a conversation, by the way. It was a conversation after LSU won the national championship game. I think that ship has gone ahead and sailed, and I don't think Coach O is that guy. Look, I think every 2, 3, 4 years, LSU could be in a situation where maybe they can compete for a playoff berth. But right now, the way that I look at them, they're Georgia, they're Florida, they're Auburn, I guess. Yeah, everything can align like it did last year, but this isn't a team that's built to beat Bama. Crazy stat, LSU's about to probably finish the season with 3, maybe 4 wins. Alabama has won 5 national championships under Nick Saban. They've never finished with less than 10 wins the season after. I know it's a little bit different this year because there aren't 12 games, but like I said, there's something clearly going on in that facility. I don't know if it's Coach O. I don't know if it's his hires. I don't know if he's not vibing with the new coaches. I don't know if there's no leadership with Joe Burrow being out of the building and Patrick Queen in the NFL or whatever, but it's clear this is a different program, and it's definitely heading in the wrong direction.